All right, so today we're going to do something a little different.
Okay.
We're going urban,
Hmm.
but not in the way you might think.
Interesting.
We're talking prepping.
Oh,
Yes, prepping, but right here in the heart of the city.
right in the city.
Our source is the Urban Prepper's Emergency Food Supply Guide
Okay.
by Portuguese prepper.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
You know, the city might seem like the last place you need to worry about food security,
Right.
but just think about it for a second.
Okay.
Earthquakes, blackouts, that winter storm that shut down the entire city a couple of years back,
Uh-huh.
suddenly that 24/7 bodega isn't so reliable anymore.
That's very true.
Yeah.
You don't think about it until it's
Yeah.
too late. Right.
Right, exactly.
And then you're stuck.
You're stuck.
Yeah. What's so fascinating about urban prepping is that it really forces you to think outside the box.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not working with acres of land in a root cellar like you see in all the movies.
Right.
You've got limited space, maybe some skeptical roommates, and a whole different set of challenges.
And that's where I think this guide gets really interesting.
Yeah.
It's not about hoarding mountains of beans and rice. You know, it's about creating
a sustainable
an
system.
efficient system that fits your urban lifestyle.
Exactly.
So-
One of the first things the guide emphasizes
Yeah.
is moving away from that doomsday prepper mentality.
Okay.
It's not about hunkering down in a bunker.
Right.
It's about being prepared to maintain some normalcy in your life,
Yeah.
even when things get a little chaotic outside.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's unpack this urban prepper pantry.
Right.
First up, canned goods.
Okay.
Now, I have to admit, when I think prepping, I picture endless shelves of identical cans of soup.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But this guide actually advocates for variety.
Right, because let's be honest, surviving on nothing but soup for
Yeah.
weeks on end sounds pretty miserable.
Yeah, I think so.
And nutritionally, it's not ideal either.
Right.
The guide really emphasizes thinking about food groups.
Okay.
Canned meats, like chicken or tuna,
Okay.
great for protein.
Yep.
But don't forget about canned fruits and veggies for those essential vitamins and minerals.
And you know, some of the newer canned goods
Oh, yeah.
are actually pretty gourmet.
Definitely.
Like I recently discovered these canned smoked salmon fillets
Wow.
that are amazing on crackers.
That's pretty fancy.
It's not just about survival anymore, you know, it's about maintaining some quality of life even in a tough situation.
Absolutely. And that ties into another key takeaway from the guide,
Okay.
the importance of enjoying your prepper pantry,
Okay.
even in non-emergency situations.
Yeah.
Rotate those items
Right.
into your everyday meal so nothing goes to waste.
Makes sense.
And you get used to incorporating them in your cooking.
That's a really good idea.
Sure.
Okay, so canned goods, check. But what about those shelf-stable meals that have become so popular?
Yeah.
The guide spends a good chunk of time talking about freeze-dried meals.
And for good reason. The technology has come a long way.
Okay.
These aren't your grandpa's dehydrated camping meals.
Oh, I see.
We're talking gourmet entrees,
Great.
even desserts
Wow.
can last for 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's longer than some marriages.
That's true.
But seriously, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
What's the science behind that kind of longevity?
It all comes down to removing moisture
Okay.
while preserving nutrients and flavor.
Interesting.
And because they're so lightweight,
Yeah.
they're ideal for urban preppers who might not have a ton of storage space.
Right.
Plus, many of them just require adding boiling water,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them incredibly convenient if you're dealing with a power outage.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So we've got canned goods,
Okay.
freeze-dried meals.
Sure.
What about those pantry staples, like rice, beans, and oats?
Yeah. Those are important.
The guide seems to be a big fan of bulk buying.
Bulk buying is definitely cost effective,
Yeah.
especially if you're on a budget.
Right.
But the key here is proper storage.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking airtight containers.
Okay.
And not just any old plastic container.
Right.
Those Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers are the gold standard for long-term storage.
Okay, I have to admit, I've seen those Mylar bags online,
Yeah.
but I've always been a little intimidated.
I get it.
What makes them so special?
It's all about creating an oxygen-free environment.
Oh,
Oxygen is the enemy of long-term food storage
interesting.
because it leads to oxidation and spoilage.
Okay.
Mylar bags are incredibly strong and impermeable to oxygen.
Uh-huh.
And when you combine them with oxygen absorbers,
Yeah.
you're essentially creating a vacuum-sealed environment
Wow.
that can keep food fresh for years, even decades.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about buying in bulk.
Yeah.
It's about investing in the right storage methods to make that bulk buying worthwhile.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, those oxygen absorbers can be used for more than just bulk grains.
Interesting.
You can use them to extend the shelf life of anything.
Really?
From nuts and seeds to dried fruits.
Wow.
Even spices.
Huh.
It's a great way to minimize waste and maximize the value of your prepper pantry.
Okay. I'm getting hungry just thinking about all this food.
Me too.
But let's not forget about those moments when you need a quick energy boost.
Yeah.
Especially in an emergency situation.
For sure.
The guide seems to emphasize having a good supply of high-energy snacks on hand.
That's right.
Okay.
Think granola bars, trail mix nuts, jerky, even protein bars.
Okay.
Things that are shelf-stable provide a good balance of carbohydrates, protein, and healthy fats.
Yeah.
And are easy to grab and go.
Right.
These can be lifesavers if you're dealing with a power outage or have to evacuate your home quickly.
Yeah, I love that idea of building a grab-and-go kit.
Oh, yeah.
With snacks and other essentials.
Huh?
It's like a mini survival pack that you can keep by the door or in your car just in case.
Exactly.
But now that we've talked about all this food, the big question is, where do we put it all?
That's the question, isn't it?
Especially in a small urban apartment.
The eternal struggle of the urban prepper.
Right.
This is where things get really creative.
Okay.
We're talking about maximizing vertical space, under bed storage, even repurposing furniture.
Interesting.
The guide has some clever tips for making the most of every nook and cranny.
I bet.
Think shelves above doorways, rolling carts that can be tucked away, even hanging organizers.
I'm already picturing a whole Pinterest board dedicated to urban prepper storage hacks.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the importance of variety, the science of freeze-drying, the magic of Mylar bags.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I bet.
There's so much more to explore when it comes to building a sustainable and efficient emergency food supply in an urban environment.
Well, I'm hooked. Let's keep this conversation going.
So, as we delve deeper into this urban prepping guide, one thing that really stands out is the emphasis on scenario planning.
That makes sense.
It's one thing to have a stockpile of food.
Right.
But it's another thing entirely to know how to use it effectively in different situations.
For sure.
Right. And the guide breaks it down into different time frames.
Yeah.
Short-term, medium-term, long-term, and even extreme long-term scenarios.
Okay, so walk me through this. What's the difference between, say, a short-term disruption and a long-term emergency?
Well, a short-term disruption might be something like a power outage that lasts a few days,
a
blizzard that makes roads impassable,
right,
or even a localized flood.
Yeah.
In these cases, you're looking at maybe 1 to 3 days of relying on your preps.
So for that kind of scenario, what would be the go-to items from our urban prepper pantry?
Think convenience and ease of preparation.
Okay.
Canned goods, those ready-to-eat meals, maybe some MREs if you're feeling adventurous.
Okay.
Granola bars, trail mix, things like that.
So essentially stuff you can grab and go.
Right.
Or that requires minimal cooking if the power's out.
Precisely.
Okay.
Now, when we move into medium-term scenarios,
Yeah.
we're talking about situations that might last a week or even longer.
Okay.
Think about that major earthquake a few years back. That disrupted supply chains for weeks.
Oh, yeah.
That's when those freeze-dried meals and bulk grains really come into play.
So this is where we start to see the benefit of those longer-lasting, more versatile options.
Exactly. And this is also where having a backup cooking method becomes crucial.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you have a camping stove?
I don't.
A solar oven?
I don't, but I've always been curious about those portable rocket stoves.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's time to invest in one.
They're incredibly efficient and versatile.
Okay.
You can cook just about anything on them.
Cool.
And they use minimal fuel. It's a great skill to have, even if you never have to use it in an emergency.
All right, so we've covered short-term and medium-term scenarios.
Okay.
Now I have to ask, what about those long-term situations?
Yeah.
The ones that keep preppers up at night.
Well, let's not get too apocalyptic.
Right.
But it's certainly wise to be prepared for the possibility
of
a prolonged disruption.
Okay.
Think about a major pandemic, a grid-down scenario, or a large-scale natural disaster. In those cases, we're talking about potentially months of relying on your preps.
So what does a long-term prepper pantry look like? Are we talking floor-to-ceiling stacks of Mylar bags?
It's not quite that dramatic,
Okay.
but it does require a more strategic approach.
Okay.
This is where those bulk grains, beans, and lentils really shine. They're
Right.
incredibly calorie-dense, relatively inexpensive, and have a long shelf life when stored properly.
And what about things like protein and fresh produce? Right.
I can't imagine living on nothing but beans and rice for months on end.
That's where things like powdered milk, freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, and even canned meats come in.
Right.
And, some long-term preppers even start thinking about gardening,
Really?
even in an urban environment.
Oh, wow.
You'd be surprised what you can grow in a small space with a little creativity.
Okay, now that's an idea I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
A little rooftop garden might not be a bad idea.
There you go.
But what about water?
Right?
It seems like that would be a major concern in a long-term emergency.
Absolutely. Water is essential for survival.
Right.
The guide recommends storing at least 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days.
Okay.
But in a long-term situation,
Right.
you'll need to consider additional sources of water,
Yeah.
like rainwater collection, or even learning how to purify water from natural sources.
Wow, this is really making me think about all the different aspects of preparedness I hadn't considered before.
And it's not just about the physical supplies. Right.
It's about the knowledge and skills that come with prepping.
Yeah.
Learning basic first aid, how to start a fire without matches, how to barter for essential goods.
Okay.
These are all skills that could be invaluable in a crisis.
I'm starting to see how prepping can actually be a really empowering process.
Yeah.
It's not just about fear, it's about taking control of your own destiny and building resilience.
Exactly, and that's a mindset shift that can benefit you in all aspects of life, not just in an emergency.
So we've talked about short-term, medium-term, and long-term scenarios.
Right.
What about those extreme long-term situations, the ones that are almost too terrifying to contemplate?
Ah, yes, the what-ifs that lurk in the back of every prepper's mind.
Right.
Nuclear disasters, societal collapse, those kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
While the likelihood of those events is thankfully quite low, it's understandable to want to be prepared for anything.
Right.
So what does extreme long-term prepping entail?
Yeah, is it even possible to be truly prepared for something of that magnitude?
It's certainly a daunting challenge, and there are no guarantees.
I imagine.
But the guide emphasizes the importance of building a foundation of knowledge and skills
Okay.
that would be applicable in a wide range of situations.
Like what kind of skills?
Things like wilderness survival,
Okay.
permaculture, basic mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
even primitive building techniques.
Really?
It's about becoming more self-sufficient and adaptable
Right.
so you can thrive in whatever environment you find yourself in.
Okay, I have to admit that sounds a little intense for me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm ready to build a log cabin and live off the land just yet.
And that's perfectly fine, remember.
Okay.
Preparedness is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
You can start small and gradually build your skills and resources over time.
That's reassuring to hear, but I am curious, what are some of the most common mistakes that people make when it comes to prepping, especially in an urban environment?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is overbuying.
Okay.
It's tempting to want to stockpile everything all at once,
Yeah, I could see that.
but that can quickly become overwhelming and expensive.
So it's better to start small and build gradually.
Exactly. Start with the basics.
Okay.
Like a few weeks worth of food and water.
Right.
And then gradually expand your preps as your budget and space allow.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some other common pitfalls?
Another mistake is neglecting dietary needs.
Oh, yeah.
If you have allergies, food sensitivities, or specific dietary requirements,
Right.
it's crucial to factor those into your prepper pantry.
Yeah.
There's no point in stockpiling food that you can't or won't eat.
So true. It's about creating a system that works for you and your individual needs.
Exactly. And another common mistake is relying solely on processed foods.
Oh, okay.
While those shelf-stable meals are convenient,
Yeah.
they're not ideal for long-term sustenance.
So it's about finding a balance between convenience and nutritional value.
Precisely.
Okay.
Think about incorporating whole grains, beans, lentils,
Right.
and other nutrient-dense foods into your preps.
All right. I'm taking notes. Any other words of wisdom for aspiring urban preppers?
One final tip.
Okay.
Don't forget about the importance of community.
Oh, yeah.
Prepping doesn't have to be a solitary endeavor.
Right.
Connect with other like-minded individuals.
Okay.
Share knowledge and resources and support each other in a real crisis. Those relationships could be invaluable.
That's a great point. I can definitely see the value in having a network of people who share your values and are prepared to help each other out. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here, from those short-term disruptions to those extreme long-term scenarios.
We have, and hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners a better understanding of what it means to be prepared, even in an urban environment.
I know, I've learned a lot. I'm feeling inspired to start building my own urban prepper pantry one step at a time.
That's fantastic. Remember, prepping is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Enjoy the process of becoming more self-sufficient and resilient.
So, as we've been talking about all these practical aspects of urban prepping,
Yeah.
from, freeze-dried meals to rocket stoves and all that,
Yeah.
it's really struck me that there's a whole other side to this.
Oh,
the psychological aspect.
Right.
It seems like prepping isn't just about having the right supplies. It's about having the right mindset.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd argue that the mental and emotional aspects of prepping are just as important
Okay.
as the physical preparation.
So what does that mean exactly?
Yeah.
How do you cultivate that prepper mindset?
Well, it starts with acknowledging that unexpected events happen.
Right.
That's just a reality of life.
Sure.
But instead of feeling overwhelmed or powerless, you choose to focus on what you can control.
Okay.
You take steps to prepare yourself and your loved ones, which can actually be a really empowering process.
So it's about shifting from a place of fear or anxiety
Right.
to a place of proactive problem solving. Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being rather than feeling like a victim of circumstance. And, there's a certain peace of mind that comes with knowing you're prepared no matter what life throws your way.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Right.
It's like having a secret weapon against the unexpected.
Right.
But I imagine there's also a social aspect to all this, right?
Absolutely.
Prepping doesn't have to be a solitary pursuit.
In fact, connecting with other like-minded individuals is one of the best things you can do as a prepper.
Okay.
Sharing knowledge resources, even just moral support,
Yeah.
can make all the difference, especially in a real crisis situation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like building a community of resilience where everyone is looking out for each other.
Exactly.
And, I think there's also an element of self-reliance that comes with prepping,
Oh, for sure.
which can be really appealing, especially in our increasingly complex and interconnected world.
I agree. It's about reclaiming some of that agency and independence that we often feel we've lost.
Learning how to grow your own food, purify water, fix basic household items.
Right.
These are all skills that connect us back to our ancestors and give us a sense of confidence in our ability to take care of ourselves.
It strikes me that there's a certain sustainability ethos that runs through the prepping community as well.
For sure.
It's about being mindful of resources, reducing waste, and living in a way that's more in harmony with the natural world.
That's a great point. Preppers tend to be very aware of their impact on the environment and are often at the forefront of movements like permaculture, renewable energy, and zero-waste living.
So it's not just about surviving a disaster. It's about creating a more sustainable and resilient way of life for the long haul.
Precisely. And, I think that's what makes prepping so compelling for so many people. It's not just about fear or paranoia.
Right.
It's about taking control of your own destiny, connecting with community, and living in a way that aligns with your values.
Well said. I have to admit, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the multifaceted world of urban prepping. It's so much more than just stockpiling cans of beans.
Right.
It's about personal empowerment, community building, and creating a more sustainable future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Huh?
And remember, preparedness is a journey, not a destination. Start small, build gradually, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
And most importantly, enjoy the process.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, prepping is all about creating a life that you feel good about both now and in the future.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of urban prepping.
Do forget to check out www.portugueseprepper.com for more information and resources.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay prepared.